Hi there, students. I'm XS. That's little x, little s, which stands for extra sweet, because that's what I am. Today we're going to start talking about katakana. When we first started learning hiragana together, I told you that hiragana was just one of the Japanese writing systems. Let me now remove the veil a little bit about that. Modern Japanese has 4 writing systems: hiragana, katakana, kanji, and romaji. Romaji is easy, as you probably already know it. Romaji simply refers to writing out a Japanese word using our English alphabet. Hiragana we've studied a bit together, and as I've told you before, hiragana is primarily used to do the grammatical lifting in a sentence. Kanji comes directly from the traditional Chinese Han writing system, and it's logographic, meaning each kanji character stands in for one word or one concept. And lastly, there is katakana. Katakana are used primarily in 2 ways. First, katakana are used to write words from other languages. So if a Japanese speaker were going to write out an English word, say computer as an example, then that word would most often be written in katakana. Secondly, katakana can also be used to write out onomatopoeic sounds in Japanese. These sounds are often, but not always, reduplicated or repeated. Examples include doki doki, the sound of a heartbeat, koso koso, meaning to whisper stealthily, or pika pika, which means to sparkle. Whenever I have a new student that I'm teaching, I will frequently tell them that they shouldn't worry too much about mastering katakana right away. It's definitely important, but it's always been my humble opinion that your first step should be to ensure that you've absolutely mastered hiragana, because I do find that katakana will fall into place over time. Over the next 3 lessons, I'm going to introduce you to katakana, and I'll try my best to show how they relate to their hiragana counterparts. What I would tell you is, please don't stress too much about banging katakana into your head. They appear far less frequently in text than hiragana do, so definitely make mastering hiragana your focus if you haven't done that yet. So why don't we go ahead and get things underway, shall we? Welcome back to the classroom of history. I don't know why I said that. I guess I have the Soul Calibur series on my mind for some reason. These souls bound in an everlasting dance between learning hiragana and learning katakana. It's just a dope game, honestly. So here we're seeing the whole of the basic hiragana chart. We've learned all these sounds, and they basically represent all the basic hiragana that you need. Well, now I'm going to teach you katakana. So from this hiragana chart, we're going to go to this katakana chart. There you go. There are all the katakana. Thanks for coming, everyone. Mata ne! No, I'm just kidding. I'm going to show you all of these individually and teach you how to pronounce them, even though you already basically know. But I still wanted you to see this chart to start with because I think it's really important to remember that katakana are 1-for-1 comparable to hiragana. We don't really need to learn new pronunciations, and you already have the basis for all of these concepts. So we're going to fly through this content a little faster than we did with hiragana. Sound good? Good. Alright, so here is a. It's just like a in hiragana. You're going to quickly notice that compared to hiragana, katakana are blockier with sharper edges. There's actually a really cool historical reason for that. Early in Japanese history, only men were allowed to learn kanji. Hiragana became this kind of woman's language, a language in which only women would write. That's part of the reason why hiragana look really flowy and graceful in comparison to the blockier katakana. There's actually a lot more to that story that I'm letting on, but this isn't really the place to get sidetracked by pre-modern Japanese gender politics. Maybe a future video? Anyway, this is a, and this is e. It's only 2 lines, and maybe it looks a little bit like an English I. Here is our katakana for the u sound. I think you can really compare this to the hiragana u. You have a line and you have a curve underneath. So it's just like the hiragana u. It's just that this is a little bit blockier, right? Katakana really do somewhat resemble their hiragana counterparts in some ways, but you might have to be a little creative in trying to spot the similarities. You can almost think of katakana as like a different font, as if hiragana were cursive and katakana were block letters. We're speeding through the katakana agyo. Here's e. Remember when we learned e in hiragana and then later we learned he, and I told you that he can also be pronounced e in some cases? Well, generally speaking, you're not going to have those pronunciation shenanigans in katakana. With some rare exceptions, katakana are going to follow the rules more rigidly than hiragana. Anyway, e is this character, and it kind of looks like a capital T standing on the ground. And here is o. Basically, it's just 3 lines. One down, one across, and then one diagonally down and to the left. I'll talk more about how we write all the hiragana and katakana in another video in the future, but not until after we've covered all the katakana. I really do find the topic of writing really, really fascinating, and I'd like to look into it more with you. So that's the agyo, a, I, u, e, o. They're pronounced exactly the same as their complementary hiragana. And because I'm a very nice puppy-sensei, let's look at the katakana and hiragana side by side, okay? Here are the hiragana in a slightly blue color. So just the same a, I, u, e, and o. Hopefully, as you look at these, you're able to see that they kind of resemble one another, right? At least a little bit. Like, let's specifically look at e for a second. In hiragana, when you're writing e, you have a little bit of a squiggle across, a little bit of a squiggle down, and another little bit of a squiggle across again, plus that extra little line at the top. In katakana, you're also writing a line across, a line down, and a line across again, just without the little bit at the top. O is similar too, right? You don't have a loop in katakana, but they both have a pretty simple cross shape plus something extra. Anyway, let's learn a word together. This is ea in katakana. Remember that we're still going to have that concept of hiatus, where it's okay for vowel sounds to be next to one another, right? So ea means air. Of course, Japanese actually also has its own word for air or wind, but I actually hear ea very often in a lot of compounds. For example, earcon, which means air conditioner. For katakana, I'm only going to give you basically just one word for each gyo, so we're going to move right along to the kagyo. This is ka. You see it now, right? It looks almost exactly like ka in hiragana. It's only missing that extra little bit of a line to the right. That should make this katakana very easy to remember, but unfortunately, remember what I said about hiragana becoming something like a woman's language because only men could learn kanji? Well, the unfortunate byproduct of that is that a lot of katakana really strongly resemble kanji, especially older kanji. But ka is one of the ones that still resembles a modern kanji. There's a kanji character, chikara, meaning strength, and it looks almost exactly like katakana ka. Actually, not even almost. They really look exactly like one another. This next one is ki. It also looks quite a lot like the hiragana ki. It's only missing the little curve at the bottom, but it's still one line down, 2 lines across, just like the shape at the top of ki in hiragana. Here's ku. It's sort of similar to ku in hiragana, but it's facing the opposite way. And here is ke. It's a little bit like ku, but with a little extra bit of a line to the right side. And lastly, we have ko. I told you we're flying through these really quickly. I think ko also looks a lot like the ko from hiragana, only it's kind of flipped backwards. So here's the whole kagyo in katakana. Ka, ki, ku, ke, ko. If we look at both the katakana and hiragana together, I really hope that you can definitely see the resemblance between the two. Maybe with the exception of ke, these are very similar to one another, aren't they? Otagai ni niteru. They resemble one another. New word, and it's a good one. By the way, you should totally watch my Portal playthrough. It was so much fun. This word is keiki. See that long line in the middle? That's somewhat special in katakana, and it just means that you should hold the previous vowel sound a little longer. So this isn't keki, it's keiki, keiki. And I'm sure that you already must know that keiki means cake. You knew it because you're all brilliant. And also, the cake wasn't a lie. For katakana, we're going to go ahead and cover the diacritics right away, unlike what we did with hiragana. So these are going to follow the exact same rules as what we said before. In other words, a katakana ka plus two little lines called a dakuten makes ga. And ki plus dakuten makes gi. And ku with dakuten make gu. And this is ge. Heh, sounds gay, I'm in. And this is go. Easy, right? Ga, gi, gu, ge, go. Ga, gi, gu, ge, go. Here they are together. You already have a basis of understanding for how dakuten work, so we don't need to linger on this too long. Okay, let's use gi to make the word gia. Can you think of what that might mean? Keep in mind that R is a little different in Japanese, so the R sound doesn't always translate super well over from other languages, especially if it comes at the end of a word the way it does in gear. Now, earlier we made the word ea, and now we've just made the word gia. So let's put them together and we get eagia. Or Air Gear. Air Gear is one of my top manga of all time. It's one of the first that I really started really voraciously reading, so it definitely has that nostalgia factor for me. If you haven't been exposed to Air Gear, the concept is, why don't we take rollerblades and put high-powered engines on them? It might be the best manga with the dumbest concept that I know of. But I didn't just teach you this word because I wanted to talk about Air Gear. Nope. I wanted you to see that little dot in the middle. Japanese does not traditionally use spacing between words. That might sound like a foreign concept and maybe even a little scary, but when Japanese sentences are written out, there aren't spaces to divide words from one another. That's actually even worse in pre-modern Japanese, when you didn't even have any kind of marking between sentences either. Everything was just this constant deluge of characters, one after another, and you just had to figure out where the breaks in thoughts were supposed to go. In modern Japanese, though, this little dot is kind of like a punctuation that's used to sort of manufacture a space between words, particularly in katakana when two words really need to be separated from one another, like words coming from English that need to be two words. Anyway, this little guy is called nakaguro in Japanese, meaning the middle black. Actually, though, I think our English word for him is even funnier. It's called an interpunct. I love that. Moving right along, we'll do the S sounds in katakana. This is sa. Watch out when you see this katakana. It really looks like se in hiragana. I see students all the time thinking that this should be se, but it's not. It's definitely sa. You just have to do your best to memorize this one and make sure you don't get it confused with hiragana se. Here is shi. There are 4 katakana that I think really resemble smiley faces. It's really easy to get them confused, so I'll teach you how I remember them. She is a smiley face with 2 eyes open and the mouth somewhat flat across. I like to think that this is what my face looks like when I say she out of the corner of my mouth. She. slight smile, just out of the right side of my mouth. We'll revisit this when we learn more of these smiley guys. Here is su. It's just 3 little lines, straight over, down and to the left, and then another little line coming out of the middle of that one, going down and to the right. And here is se. It would be almost easy to remember this one compared to hiragana se if not for the existence of katakana sa. Just remember that se is in the same direction as hiragana se, but with one fewer line. It's tricky, but remember, I do think that katakana just sort of start to come naturally after a while, so please don't stress about sa, se, and se too much. And now we have so. So is the second smiley face katakana. Compared to she, so has one eye closed, and the mouth is more of a vertical line. So I remember it by creating that same appearance with my face when I say it. I close one eye and I say so with my mouth really twisted upward. She, somewhat flat, both eyes open. So, mouth twisted upward, one eye closed. I don't know, it's helpful for me. I hope maybe it helps you too. There are S sounds in katakana. And the hiragana to go with them. I think this S line of katakana really confuses students and causes them the most trouble. They just feel really tricky. Let's learn a quick word, kosu. Keeping in mind what we said earlier about the R sound, can you imagine what kosu must mean? Course, of course. It can mean anything from like a course that you take at school, like Puppy-Sensei's Japanese course, or a race course. We'll very quickly go through the katakana sagyo with dakuten. You already know that the S sounds plus dakuten make Z sounds. So we have za, ji, zu, ze, and zo. Zo kind of looks like a smile with a dimple. So stinking cute. Here are all of these Z sounds in katakana together. And I'll give you the hiragana just for your reference. So far we've made several words in katakana that come from English, but now let's make an onomatopoeic word. This is zaza. I actually love this word. Zaza is like the sound of heavy rain, static, or white noise. You can imagine like za, like the sound of really heavy rain falling on a metal roof. I love rainy weather. It might be my favorite, although I really like snow too. Alright, we have just a few more katakana to get through today. This is ta. Have you noticed that several katakana have a kind of similar shape to katakana ku, but with just some extra stuff attached? Ta is like this, and it's got this little line right through the middle, similar to su a little bit, I guess. And this is chi. Somebody once told me that they think that this katakana looks like a flasher, and they remember it because of the word ecchi. I mean, sure, if you're into that. Here's tsu. It's another smiley face. It looks almost exactly like she, only the mouth part is more vertical. Or it looks like so, but with both eyes open. Again, I try to make this sound with my face. Tsu. Both eyes open, mouth twisted up, and my lip raised on one side. Tsu, tsu, tsu. I know it's really tough to remember which one is which, but yeah, trying to create these shapes with my mouth, I guess it really helps me, and I hope it helps you too. Here's te. When I see this character, I immediately think of the post office. Post offices in Japan are marked with the te symbol just like this, which is taken from the word teishin. meaning communications. And last is to. I do think to resembles the hiragana to a little bit. It's just flatter, I guess. Maybe somebody stepped on your toe. So we have ta, chi, tsu, te, to. And the same in hiragana, right? Ta, chi, tsu, te, to. Just be sure that you're remembering that it's chi and tsu rather than ti and tu. I think that's more important in katakana because, as we'll talk about in a future lesson, you actually can have the T and tu sounds that you're able to write out with katakana. Let's make the word cheese. Obviously, you must know what that means, right? Cheese means cheese. What's your favorite type of cheese? Let me know in the comments. Okay, this was a lot today, right? Are your brains already full? Let's quickly get through the D sounds. You know exactly what to expect. Da, ji, zu, de, and do. All together, da, ji, zu, de, do. And with the hiragana, da, ji, zu, de, do. We got through a lot today. Let's make one more word before the quiz. This is doki doki. Doki doki is an onomatopoeic word meaning thump thump, exactly like the thump thumping of your heart. If you watch any anime at all, you've almost certainly heard doki doki. It sort of has a little bit of a romantic implication too, because your heart beats faster around the people that you love, just like my little puppy heart beats faster whenever I see all of your lovely faces. The meaning of doki doki doesn't always have to be romantic though. It can also just imply that you're nervous or anxious about something, like anxious about a quiz. Haha. Okay, one thing that I want you to remember about katakana is that when any language takes in a word from another language, it becomes part of the new language's vernacular. So as we go through the quiz together, I want you to please remember that you're not just making up new words and writing them in katakana. These are accepted words in the Japanese vernacular. So starting with this one, what's this word? It means coach, so you say it kochi. Don't forget that line in the middle. It really just makes the previous vowel sound a little bit longer. Kochi. How about this word? It's actually two words, and you've already seen them today. It means cheesecake, so you would say it cheesecake. Cheesecake. Next one, and this one is a little trickier, so I'm going to see if you can figure it out. How would you say this? And what do you think it might mean? So you pronounce it stagio. Stagio. You might be thinking that that means like stadium or something, but it actually means studio. Stagio. This is what I was saying before about katakana not just being made up words from other languages. When you want to say studio in katakana, you might think that you should say studio, but that's not quite right because the word in Japanese is stagio. So katakana are very helpful because they allow you to write out words from English or from other languages, but that doesn't mean that you can simply not memorize words in katakana, because if you're using the wrong word, even in katakana, you're not going to be understood. A great example of this is pantsu. If you see some girl on a train and you think that she's got some kind of smudge on her jeans, and you ask, "Pantsu mite mo ii desu ka?" You might think that you're saying, is it okay if I look at your pants? But she's probably not going to interpret it that way. Don't fall into the trap of thinking that simply saying an English word in the katakana style makes it a Japanese word, because it doesn't. Okay, mini lecture on pantsu over. The next word is this one. How would you say it? Of course, it's omega, right? Omega, omega. Students, what did you think of Star Wars Bad Batch? I'm not going to spoil anything for anybody, but the way it ended, oh, my little puppy heart, it's just so emotional. I cried lots. Like, I sobbed, honestly. Moving on, この言葉の発音は? How would you pronounce this word? Gaido, meaning guide. Gaido. You're doing great, and we're almost done for the day. This one should be so easy. It's just 2 little katakana. How do you say it? Door, which means door. And this one? Ice, meaning ice. This is another case where there's absolutely a native Japanese word for ice, kori, but you use aisu a lot in different compounds. Plus, I hear it used really often in a slangy way for ice cream. Ice wo tamemashou. Let's go get an ice. Last one. Every day, Puppy-Sensei wears a blank to class. Skato. A skirt. Sukato. What do you mean you can't see my skirt from where I'm standing? Alright, students, that was a lot, wasn't it? Katakana are difficult for one reason, in my personal opinion, and that's the fact that they are rare. It sort of depends on what type of media you're reading. Manga have a lot of katakana, of course, but like, I just pulled a random book off my shelf, and when I look at a single page, I only see 2 words that are written in katakana. Language is a muscle, and the more you use it, the more you retain it. So I believe a lot of Japanese language students will struggle with katakana because you just don't see katakana as often as you see hiragana or kanji. At the same time, that also means that it isn't as imperative that you know it quite as well. I do believe that there comes a point where you can just sort of naturally start recognizing katakana because they resemble hiragana and they can be sounded out in the context of a sentence, especially when you consider that the majority of words written in katakana come from English. Anyway, I'll do 2 more videos on katakana, so please be watching for those soon. I also want to say, tiny accomplishment, but we passed 100 subscribers on the channel. I am absolutely overjoyed that I've been able to reach so many people with my content. It brings me an immeasurable amount of delight knowing that I'm helping you all along on your journey as you learn Japanese. I've listened to your comments, and I'm doing my best to take everything into my mind as I plan out my future lessons. I know some of my viewers are really excited for me to move beyond the basics and cover more grammar, kanji, and more advanced concepts. I really hate to ask you to be patient, but I promise that I will start teaching you the harder stuff at some point. I just want to get through the basics first. Logistically, it's not always easy for me to get out all these videos on a regular schedule, so we're doing everything that we can to get you good quality content as we press forward with new topics. In the end, though, it really never hurts to review the basics. More than anything, I just really hope that you're all enjoying my content. Don't forget, I stream on Twitch as well, Tuesdays and Saturdays at 4 p.m. Pacific time. I really hope I can see you all there. Please leave me a like and subscribe to me. It means a lot to me. It really does. Lead with love, everybody. I've been Excess. See you later. Mata ne.